Eric had always been a great programmer, known for his meticulous attention to detail and the flawless software he created. One morning, he woke up early to work on a particular project at the office before his morning stand-up. He decided to head to his favorite coffee place, Bonici's, to grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the early morning atmosphere. As he sat drinking his coffee, he watched people through the window, as he often did. He was a man who noticed the smallest details. He observed a man in a trench coat with a shady look about him wandering in the park opposite the coffee shop. The man looked like he was about to take gum out of his mouth and put it in the trash. However, because Eric was watching, he noticed the man take nothing out of his mouth and instead reach into his pocket, throwing something into the trash instead. For Eric, curiosity got the better of him, and after finishing his coffee, he walked over to the trash can to investigate. He saw a silver object on top of the pile of rubbish and decided to pick it up quickly, as he felt like he was being followed. As he walked off, he felt the presence of another person behind him, increasing pace. As soon as he turned the corner, Eric ran as fast as he could. As he started work that morning, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched and followed. That night, as he took out the rubbish at home, he noticed the rubbish bin lid on the ground. As he went to pick it up, a car turned its lights on and drove away. Eric rushed back into the house, locked the door, and tried to catch his breath, realizing he had never actually looked at the object he picked up from the trash that morning. He reached into his coat pocket and found a memory drive. A streak of dread ran down his spine, as he knew he should never open such a thing. He dusted off an old laptop from years ago, booted up a security operating system known as Tales from a thumb drive, and opened the file, having no idea what to expect. Inside, he found a series of random hexadecimal gibberish. In an attempt to decode this, he ran it through a few reverse cipher programs he wrote back in university, but the only thing he got from it was a series of numbers that didn't seem to mean anything. After looking at the results of one of the outputs, he realized that they were coordinates somewhere in his county. He felt too tired to look into this further and fell asleep. The next day, as he was working on code for his latest project at a large software company, he noticed a small difference in his configuration folder. A file had been added, and opening the file revealed a message: "One man's trash is another's treasure, but you already know that, don't you, Eric?" A shiver ran down his spine, wondering what exactly the treasure was. At the bottom of the file was a link with .onion at the end. Eric knew this would take him to the dark web. Later that night, his curiosity forced him to type the long link into his old laptop on the Tor browser and visit the website. He found himself logged into an account on some kind of marketplace, an account that he didn't own. He saw an order confirmation with an address, a package only described as Tin Man and a time. The address was for a carpet warehouse just out of town. He was utterly confused but decided to try and click onto the rest of the site. He clicked but nothing happened, so he kept trying. Damn, they said Tor was slow, but come on, he thought. After several failed attempts, he received a phone call from an anonymous number with a husky voice that said, "Since you intercepted the location of the package, it looks like you're going to be our little delivery boy for the day, huh? Take the package to the given address by midnight tonight, or let's say that." The voice then proceeded to read out his address and name, his parents' house, and the passcode to their alarm system. They might get a little package of their own. Fear ran through Eric's body as he sensed the dread and wondered if they knew he had deciphered the coordinates already. He spent the next half hour pacing and contemplating what to do. It was already 9 p.m., and he considered calling the police. He went back to the site to try and minimize the window, but he couldn't, and the order confirmation page had changed. Under delivery instructions, there was just an image file that Eric knew wasn't there before. He clicked on it and opened the image. To his horror, he saw a picture of his parents' front living room, his father asleep in the armchair with the remote in his hand. On the television was the news, which read the headline, "Mice Infestation at the Cheesecake Factory." He turned on the television to see the very same headline at the bottom of the screen beneath the news anchor. This was happening now, that picture was taken now. He realized he had no choice but to pick up the package and take it to the address. He drove to the location he found from Googling the coordinates and arrived at a big open field with no lights. He was terrified but, armed with a flashlight, he approached the gate. The light passed briefly over a white plastic container, and he understood that this was the package. It was quite heavy and rattled a lot as he moved it to his car trunk. Driving back to the main area of town to go to the carpet warehouse, he was frantic, nervous, and couldn't think straight. He failed to avoid a bump in the road, causing the whole car to shake, and he heard something in his trunk crash. He stopped in the dead of night along the road to check if the package was damaged. The lid of the container seemed a bit loose and broken. At this point, his curiosity overtook him, and he opened it. Inside, he found what looked like a human heart surrounded by plenty of ice, with blood covering much of the ice. It appeared as if it had been freshly taken from whatever creature had owned the heart. He closed the lid and tried not to think about it. Eric arrived at the carpet warehouse at 11:45 p.m. and looked around for the door. Down the side of the building was a dimly lit entrance. There seemed to be no other way in, so he reluctantly headed in. Eric knocked on the door and heard nothing back. He didn't want to leave the heart there but was also terrified. He briefly left the heart at the doorstep to head out the alley and see if there were any cars around or any person who would be there to collect the package. No one. He went back to the doorway, but the white container had disappeared. He muttered, "No, no, 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 no," and checked the closed doorway. Nothing. He turned around and saw a dark figure who immediately knocked him out. Eric woke up later in his car, parked in a theater parking lot, unsure of what had happened. On his lap was a television remote control and a Polaroid photograph of him carrying the container to the warehouse that had owned. "Look forward to working with you soon," written on it. He wondered what that meant. Was the remote control some symbol of power? He soon realized that this was the remote control from his parents' house in the picture, as it had the same blue tape holding the battery cover on, and it had been taken from his parents' house. A cold feeling rushed down his spine as he prayed that he was in a dream. He had no idea what was to come, and this nightmare never seemed to end. Over the next few weeks, Eric heard nothing from the mysterious group that had forced him into this nightmarish situation. Despite the silence, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He changed his routines, always looking over his shoulder, avoiding quiet places, and doing everything he could to stay under the radar. He had trouble sleeping, and his work began to suffer. His colleagues noticed a change in him but didn't know how to help. Eric felt increasingly isolated, knowing that he couldn't share his experience with anyone. He tried to convince himself that it was all over, but deep down, he knew that the events of that night would haunt him for the rest of his life. Months passed, and the memories began to fade slowly. Eric started regaining some semblance of normalcy in his life, but he could never fully shake the feeling that he was being watched. Despite the ongoing paranoia, he managed to refocus on his work and regain the trust of his colleagues. One afternoon, as he was working, Eric noticed a small comment added in the code he was writing. With a sense of dread, he glanced at it to find the words, "We never forget. Stay alert." Later, as he drove home, the reality of his situation sunk in. He was forever entangled with a dangerous group that operated in the dark, and he would always be looking over his shoulder, never truly feeling safe again.